Let's take a journey through the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer, moving chronologically through his major works, from On the Fourfold Root of the Principle of Sufficient Reason, through his magnum opus, The World as Will and Representation, then on to his powerful essays on the freedom of the will and on the basis of morality, and finally to his later writings in Parerga and Paralipomena, as well as posthumous collections like Essays and Aphorisms and the early manuscripts. His philosophy blends Kantian idealism, Eastern mysticism, and a dark, visceral pessimism into a system that is both deeply unsettling and strangely beautiful. Born in 1788 in Danzig and dying in 1860 in Frankfurt, Schopenhauer lived largely in solitude, crafting a worldview in which life is driven by a blind and irrational force he called the will. This overview will explore the origin, content, and connections among his works, revealing a philosopher who stared deeply into life's suffering and dared to name it. Schopenhauer's philosophical career begins with his doctoral dissertation on the fourfold root of the principle of sufficient reason, written in 1813 when he was just 25. Composed in Rudolstadt after studies in Tingen and Berlin, this dense but foundational work analyzes the principle that everything has a reason, breaking it into four distinct forms: causality for physical events, logical grounds for truths, mathematical necessity for space and time, and motivation for human action. Though technical and initially overlooked, the book is key to understanding his later thought. Drawing from Kant, Schopenhauer insists that space, time, and causality are not properties of the world itself, but of the mind. Even in his early manuscripts published after his death, we see this logic taking shape. Though he had not yet named the will, a clear belief in necessity and inevitability emerges. This work lays the epistemological groundwork for the metaphysical leap to come. By 1819, now 30 and living in Dresden, Schopenhauer published the first volume of his magnum opus, The World as Will and Representation. This 500-page treatise marks the bold expansion of his earlier logic into a complete philosophical system. He divides reality into two realms: the world as representation, what we perceive through our senses and intellect which is a veil over true reality, and the world as will, a blind universal force driving all things. Drawing from Kant and Plato, Schopenhauer identifies this will as the mysterious thing in itself, the underlying essence of everything. Nature, from falling stones to roaring lions, becomes a theater of this will in action. Human desires, especially hunger and lust, are its clearest expressions. Life, he argues, is a cycle of endless striving, caught between pain and boredom. Yet he sees moments of escape in art, especially music, and in ascetic renunciation. Though published with confidence, the book initially failed. Yet it laid the foundation of his philosophy, organized into 4 books on knowledge, will, aesthetics, and ethics that he would continue to develop for the rest of his life. In 1839, Schopenhauer wrote On the Freedom of the Will, a 90-page essay that finally won him recognition, earning a prize from the Royal Norwegian Society. This work distills and sharpens ideas from his earlier writings, particularly regarding human action. Here, he argues that while we may appear to act freely, we are in fact bound by necessity. Our character, fixed from birth, and external motives determine our actions. We may feel free, but we are as determined as clockwork. This essay distinguishes between physical freedom, the ability to act without external constraint, and moral freedom, the illusory belief that we can choose freely. Using clear, everyday examples, Schopenhauer shows how motives govern behavior, whether it's a thief stealing or a saint helping. Compact and forceful, this essay links his metaphysics with ethical life, anchoring his system in the human condition. A year later, Schopenhauer submitted On the Basis of Morality to another prize competition, this time in Denmark, and was bitterly disappointed when he lost. Written in his increasingly reclusive Frankfurt years, this essay tackles the foundations of ethical behavior in a world governed by the will. Rejecting Kant's categorical imperative as abstract and utilitarianism as crude, Schopenhauer places compassion, might lead, at the center of morality. He argues that truly moral acts occur when one sees through the illusion of individuality and feels the suffering of others as one's own. Everyday examples, risking one's life to save another or sharing food, become illustrations of this deeper metaphysical unity. While acknowledging that most human behavior is selfish, he insists that compassion offers a glimpse of nobility amid a bleak world. Together with the Freedom essay, it formed the 2 fundamental problems of ethics, balancing his grim metaphysics with a fragile human hope. In 1844, at 56, Schopenhauer published Volume 2 of The World as Will and Representation, a massive 700-page supplement to Volume 1. Though not a new system, it offers expanded reflections, drawing from science, physiology, and biology to reinforce his earlier claims. He elaborates on how perception works, how the body reveals the will, and how natural phenomena such as instinct, sex, and gravity mirror this restless force. His views on aesthetics deepen, with music as the purest expression of the will and tragedy as its most honest portrayal. Ethics darken further, emphasizing renunciation and death as ways to resist the will. The book includes numerous tangents, critiques of Hegel, musings on Goethe, and reflections on solitude. Though still ignored by most, this second volume completes the architecture of his thought, the intellectual spine of his life's work. In 1851, Schopenhauer published Parerga and Paralipomena, a sprawling, two-volume collection of essays, aphorisms, and reflections. At last, fame arrived. These writings are less systematic but more accessible, and they showcase his sharp wit, literary skill, and deep pessimism. Volume 1 deals with topics like science, history, and metaphysics. Volume 2 includes the famous aphorisms on the wisdom of life, where Schopenhauer offers practical advice: prioritize health, cherish solitude, avoid crowds. He praises art and nature, laments human suffering, and delivers biting cultural critiques. The collection became a surprise success, finally bringing Schopenhauer public recognition after decades of neglect. After his death in 1860, Schopenhauer's thought lived on through edited volumes like essays and aphorisms, and the early manuscripts which reveal the making of his mind. These notebooks capture a young philosopher wrestling with Fichte, absorbing Kant, and sketching out what would become his major ideas. There is an apparent contrast in which early energy gives way to later resignation, but the essential vision remains intact. Together, these works frame Schopenhauer's philosophical arc, from rigorous logic and epistemology, through metaphysical boldness and ethical depth, to literary brilliance and cultural critique. He shaped thinkers from Nietzsche to Freud and still speaks to modern readers with uncanny relevance. Arthur Schopenhauer's philosophy paints a dark yet penetrating picture of life as governed by a blind, insatiable will. His works, stretching from the technical clarity of his dissertation to the aphoristic brilliance of his final writings, form a unified system, one that acknowledges suffering, finds brief reprieve in art and compassion, and ultimately embraces denial as a form of wisdom. Across 3,000 pages, he constructed one of the 19th century's most haunting philosophical visions. In a world of restless striving, Schopenhauer offers not comfort, but clarity, and that in itself is a kind of consolation. Thank you for watching. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and stay tuned for more content on the philosophy series.